Yes, my friends, things are heating up around the Baltimore Ravens, and we need to talk about something that could completely change the face of this defense. We all remember the expectations surrounding Trenton Simpson when he first got his opportunity, but things never really developed the way Ravens fans hoped. Now, with Jesse Minter taking over this defense, everything could be different. Simpson is showing that speed and explosiveness again, and after what former Raven O'Dafo revealed about how much freedom Minter gives his players, I have one big question for the flock. Are we finally about to see the real Trenton Simpson? Do you believe Jesse Minter can unlock his full potential, or do you still need to see it happen in regular season games before believing? Write your opinion below, and if you've been a Baltimore Ravens fan for more than 15 years, hit that like button hard. Go Ravens! We're going to the Super Bowl. Now, let's talk about Trenton Simpson. Now, let's get right into this, because Trenton Simpson is entering a huge season. This is the 4th year of his contract, and there are major opportunities sitting right in front of him. That alone would make the season important, but the situation around him makes it even more interesting. Baltimore has a new defensive direction under Jesse Minter, and Simpson is exactly the kind of player Ravens fans have been waiting to see used in a way that fits what he does best. Those clips from the Ravens and Vikings joint practice were exciting because Simpson looked fast, aggressive, and comfortable. He was getting into plays and creating disruption, and that is what people have wanted to see from him for a long time. This is a player whose athletic ability has never really been the question. The hope has always been that Baltimore could find a consistent role where his speed becomes a weapon instead of asking him to do things that make him hesitate. Go back to Simpson's rookie year in 2023. He wasn't expected to be a starter because the Ravens already had Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen in front of him. That was a difficult linebacker combination to break into, so Simpson had to wait for opportunities. But late in that season, Baltimore had already secured the #1 seed and rested starters in the final game against Pittsburgh. That gave Simpson a chance to play more, and when that opportunity came, he was flying around. That game left a strong impression because Simpson looked like the next man ready to step into a larger role. He was moving fast, attacking the football, and showing the athletic ability that made people excited about him in the first place. At the time, there was already the possibility that Patrick Queen could leave Baltimore. So the natural thought was simple. If Queen leaves, Simpson might be ready. Queen did leave for Pittsburgh, and Simpson got his opportunity. But things did not develop the way many Ravens fans expected. Instead of looking like the fast and confident linebacker people remembered from that late-season opportunity, Simpson often looked uncomfortable. There were moments when it seemed like he was trying to figure out where he needed to be instead of simply reacting and making plays. He looked out of place at times, and the excitement surrounding his larger role started disappearing. But Simpson was not the only defender who seemed to be dealing with that problem. Baltimore had also lost Mike McDonald, and Zach Orr became defensive coordinator. Over the next 2 seasons, Simpson's difficulties became part of a larger conversation because several Ravens defenders did not always appear to be playing their best football. There were moments when players looked confused. There were moments when communication appeared to be a problem. And when the results showed up on the field, Ravens fans were left wondering why a defense with talented players could look so uncertain. That is one of the biggest reasons the arrival of Jesse Minter has created so much excitement. With Simpson specifically, the expectation is that Minter can give him a real role, not simply putting him on the field and hoping everything works, but creating responsibilities that match his strengths. Simpson has speed. He can be explosive. He can rush from the edge. He can work in space. He can chase plays. The hope is that instead of making him think through everything slowly, this defense allows him to attack. That could completely change how Simpson looks. And this is where the story becomes even more interesting, because Ravens fans are not the only people who have talked about the difference Jesse Minter can make for a defensive player. Former Raven O'Dafo experienced both situations. Owa played in Baltimore under Zach Orr, and after leaving the Ravens, he played under Jesse Minter with the Chargers. That makes his perspective especially important because he experienced the previous Baltimore defensive environment and then went directly into Minter's system. Owa spoke about some of the problems he felt were happening during his final season in Baltimore. He hinted that there were distractions and dysfunction around the Ravens and said there were daily issues involving what the defense was trying to do with personnel. He did not go deeply into every detail, But what he described sounded very familiar to anybody who watched Baltimore's defense, and sometimes wondered why players looked unsure. One part was especially important. Owa talked about what happened after Nnamdi Matabike went down. He described a lack of understanding about what the defense was going to do next. Think about that for a moment. When you lose an important player, everybody else needs to understand exactly how the defense will adjust. Roles can change. Responsibilities can change. Personnel can change. But there has to be clarity.
According to what Owa described, that clarity was not always there. And that matters when we look back at players like Simpson. Maybe what we were watching was not simply one young linebacker failing to develop. Maybe part of the problem was that several players were operating inside a defense where they did not always feel completely sure about their assignments, roles, or what was coming next. That does not erase mistakes. Players still have responsibility for their performance. But it changes the way we evaluate what happened. Now compare that with how Owa described playing for Jesse Minter. He said Minter allowed him to be free. Owa described being able to rush freely instead of feeling restricted. And that word free is important because pass rush is not always about running the exact same move over and over again. A talented pass rusher has to read what is happening, react to the blocker, and sometimes try something different. Under Minter, Owa felt like he could do that. The way the situation was described, pass rushing stopped feeling mechanical and became more like an art. Instead of being told to attack the same way for an entire game, Owa could approach the battle more like chess. He did not suddenly add a completely new collection of pass rush moves. What changed was his comfort. He felt more willing to experiment. He could be aggressive. And he did not have the same fear that one mistake would immediately send him to the sideline. That is a major point for Trenton Simpson. When a player is thinking about making a mistake, he can become slower. Not physically slower, but mentally slower. Instead of seeing something and attacking it, there can be that extra moment of hesitation. Am I supposed to go here? Am I supposed to drop? Am I supposed to rush? What happens if I miss? For a player whose biggest weapon is speed, hesitation can take away the very thing that makes him dangerous. That is why those practice highlights matter more than they normally would. Nobody should crown a player because of a few practice clips. But when you see Simpson moving aggressively and making plays, and then you hear a former Ravens defender explain how Minter's system helped him play with more freedom, you can understand why the possibilities are exciting. Owa's results after making that change were also significant. His confidence helped him produce the 6th highest pressure rate in the league according to Next Gen Stats, and he made major plays when the pressure was highest. In the Chargers' playoff game against New England, he recorded 3 sacks and forced 2 fumbles. That last part should get every Ravens fan's attention. Critical moments. That has been one of the biggest frustrations surrounding Baltimore. The Ravens have had talented teams. They have had